Today I'm just making a quick video showing something it's not new news or anything like that, but I'm just talking about something interesting that I thought Audi did to help correct a handling issue they're having, or they've had since Quattro began. You can see on this BMW, this is a E46, just a regular 3 Series from the early 2000s. You can see how short this bumper is, how far forward the front axle is, the front where the hub is, and that's good for weight distribution. So you have your engine here, and majority of the engine is at the axle and behind it, which is good, because you want to have a good, ideally a 50-50 weight distribution between the front and the rear of the car. And the further you can get the axles forward, the easier it is to have the weight distribution be correct. So Quattro has a problem, or Audi has a problem, because you have your engine off the front of a Audi Quattro, and then you have the transmission in the back, and the front axles have to come off the transmission, just being that the design of the car, being that it has a torsion center differential, the way it's always been set up. So somewhere around the midpoint of the transmission is where the differential, the front differential, comes out of the trans and goes towards the front wheels. So you can only have so much axle angle. So what ends up happening is, on the Audis, the front tire is shifted back pretty far, and there's more weight hanging off the front. So you get a lot of, the weight distribution is very front bias, and you have a lot of understeer because of that. So I'm going to show you on an older Audi here what exactly I'm trying to say. Pay attention to this distance here. This between here and the front of the car on this BMW. All right, here's a early 2000s Audi A6. Pretty normal car. You can see that distance is 2 or 3 times as big between the tire and the front of the car. It's because the engine sits up front, then the transmission, and then the axles come out of about the center of the transmission, and they go towards the front wheels. They angle them slightly forward to try to minimize this as much as they can, but you can only do so much with a CV joint before it compromises the joint. So that's what you end up with. So you end up with a very nose-heavy car, and that's just how it's been for a long time. So the solution, or something they did to improve this around 2009, I might be wrong on that, 2009, 2010. I'll show you this right here, which is I thought it was pretty clever. They still have this is just an auto trans in a A4, maybe a 2011. You can see the front nose is much shorter than the A6, than the older Audi. And it's because they're able to get the axle coming out about where the bell housing is. So the axle is actually in front of the torque converter, which sits back here. Torque converter is in there real deep, and then you have this plate, the flex plate, or technically it's not the flex plate, but it's just a drive plate that connects to the torque converter that attaches to the flex plate. And then between that gap there, the axle actually runs to the other side. It's a pretty interesting setup. I thought it was a pretty cool solution to the problem here. And so they got the differential really far mounted forward here, and they just ran a shaft to the side, and that was able to resolve some of their issues and get the weight more shifted towards the front of the car. So I thought it was pretty clever. This one has a leaky rear main seal. It's a 2-liter, very common problem on these, but yeah, interesting solution. What BMW does with their all-wheel drive cars, their xDrive, is they end up putting a differential attached to the engine oil pan, so very far forward as well, off the engine pan, off the oil pan, and then pretty much drilling a hole through it and having the axle run through the oil pan, and that's how they get there. The car looking the same on an xDrive as a rear-wheel drive model. But you end up with it's not one unit then, it's a separate differential bolted to the oil pan, and then it adds a lot more parts. Then you have another drive shaft going towards the front. This is all kind of in one unit, and it works more like how a traditional Audi Quattro setup always has. So I like this setup. Interesting solution to a problem, and that's it. So thanks for watching.